To my brother, if you ever read this, remember this truth. It's not the battlefield that breaks us. It's what follows after, in silence, when no one's watching. And still, we endure. They trained us to face the worst humanity could offer. But nothing in the manual prepared me for the eyes I met in that forest. Wild, ancient, and terrifyingly certain. That tiger didn't just come for my body. It came for everything I thought I was. You think you know where this is going? That it ends in death, vengeance, or just another bloody story lost in the woods. But I swear to you, this ending will shake something deep in you, even if you've never cried in your life. It started like any other morning at the edge of that godforsaken base in western Georgia. The country, not the state. A gray sky hung low like a wet blanket over the pines, and the air smelled of old smoke and damp soil. We were stationed there on a joint training mission, deep in the Borjomi forests, where every step cracked twigs that hadn't seen a boot in years. I remember tightening my boots while the others joked around, passing stale cigarettes and pretending we weren't freezing. The cold had teeth, but not the kind that bite to kill. Not yet. I'd volunteered to do a recon sweep ahead of the group, just a short perimeter check. Nothing special. The forest was quiet, almost respectfully so, and that's what unsettled me first. No bird calls, no wind, just the distant drip of melting frost and my own breath steaming into the air. I kept my rifle close, though it felt almost silly. What would I be shooting at here? A wolf? Maybe. But wolves run from men. What came next didn't run. A few hundred meters out, I found something strange. Claw marks along the base of a tree, fresh and deep, almost surgical. My pulse quickened. They weren't from a bear. I'd seen enough bear territory to know the difference. This was different. Lower to the ground. Deliberate. I snapped a picture with my satellite phone and kept moving, stepping softer now, like the forest had started to listen back. A scent hit me then. Coppery. Musky. Like wet fur and old blood. I froze. Something was watching. The trees thickened, and with every step, I could feel the silence weighing heavier, like it was pressing down on my chest. I scanned the underbrush, my breath shallow. Something moved just beyond my sight line. Fast, low, then gone. My grip on the rifle tightened. My training told me to regroup. My pride told me to keep going. I did neither. I just stood there trying to make sense of a presence I could feel more than see. I knew what it was before I truly saw it. My body did, and it screamed inside me. Out of the brush like liquid shadow came a shape I will never forget. Massive, silent, almost glowing in that dim morning light. A real tiger. In Georgia. Not a dream. Not a hallucination. His stripes flickered as he moved, his muscles coiled with purpose like poetry written in death. His eyes weren't just looking at me. They were choosing me. I had no time to raise my rifle, no time to run. I was prey, and he had already decided. The last thought I had before it charged was of my mother, oddly enough. Her hands washing dishes, humming something in Russian. It was strange how my mind sought her in that moment. Maybe that's what dying is. A shortcut home. But I didn't die. Not then. When the tiger lunged, I screamed so hard my throat tore. Its weight crushed me before I hit the ground, pinning me with a precision I didn't think possible. His breath was hot and rancid in my face. His paw tore open my left side like paper. I don't remember much of the first few seconds, just the sound of ripping cloth, wet snaps, and my own gurgling cries. I tried to fight. God help me. I tried. I slammed the rifle against its ribs, swung my fists, grabbed anything I could. But he was too strong, too fast. One of his claws caught the edge of my jaw and ripped downward. I felt my own blood pour across my chest, hot like boiling water. And still, I stayed conscious. Maybe it was adrenaline. Maybe it was fate. Then, as if answering a prayer I hadn't spoken, a sound cut through the chaos. A single sharp whistle. A local scout, Goga, had been tailing me silently. Something we often did during recon. The tiger's head snapped sideways at the noise. Just that split second, that breath of hesitation, was enough. I grabbed a branch, shoved it into the beast's mouth as it turned back toward me. It roared in fury, not pain, and slammed a paw across my temple. The world folded in on itself. And then, nothing. Darkness came, but not sleep. I drifted in and out of a place I can't describe. Not quite life, not quite death. Somewhere that smelled of earth, blood, and the inside of an animal's mouth. When I woke again, I wasn't in the forest. I was in a field hospital. Tubes in my arm, bandages on my face and chest. Everything hurt, but I was alive. Against every odd, I had survived. And somehow I already knew the tiger had walked away too. Not finished, just uninterested. The first time I saw myself in a mirror, I didn't recognize what I was looking at. Half my face was swollen, stitched like a patchwork doll. My left arm barely moved, tendons severed and reattached in a blur of surgeries. My ribs were broken in 3 places, and my stomach was stapled shut like some grotesque zipper. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was my eyes. They looked haunted, like I hadn't come back whole. Part of me was still lying in those woods beneath the weight of something primal. The doctors spoke in clipped, efficient tones. Nerve damage, partial paralysis, risk of infection. They didn't talk about the dreams, about how I would jolt awake gasping, sure that I could still hear it breathing. That slow, guttural rhythm just inches from my ear. They didn't mention how every shadow on the wall stretched into stripes, how every creak of the floor felt like a paw step. I couldn't explain it to anyone, not even my commanding officer. I wasn't just healing, I was unraveling. Goga came to visit once. He sat by the bed, quiet like always. Didn't say much. Just handed me the branch I'd shoved into the tiger's mouth. The one that might have bought me those precious seconds. It was scorched now, wrapped in a thin leather cord. He said nothing, but I could feel what it meant. A relic of a moment neither of us understood, but both of us survived. He touched his chest, gave a small nod, and left. That gesture said more than any words could have. Back at the base, the official report didn't know what to do with the story. A wild tiger in Georgia? Unconfirmed. Probably escaped from a smuggler. No way to verify. The case was buried under logistics and paperwork. But I knew what I saw. And I wasn't the only one. Weeks later, 2 local shepherds reported livestock torn apart, precise, clean kills. Silent, no prints, just the same strange claw marks I'd found before. The tiger wasn't gone, just watching, waiting. I started noticing other things too. Birds that stopped singing when I walked near. Dogs that growled at nothing when we patrolled certain ridgelines. A carcass left untouched in the snow, as if other predators were too afraid to feed. I didn't say anything. What was there to say? That I could still feel its presence like a ghost sewn under my skin? No one trains you for this part. The part where you survive but don't know how to live with what that means. My body healed slowly. I relearned how to grip a spoon, how to shave without slicing the scar that split my jaw. But the scars inside, those didn't obey medicine. They waited, quiet and patient, like the tiger had taught them how. I'd wake some nights drenched in sweat, convinced I was being hunted again. Sometimes I'd hear a low growl under my bed, but there'd be nothing there. I stopped trusting mirrors, stopped trusting silence. I carried the jungle in my chest. I started drawing. At first just to pass time, then to remember. The tiger's face appeared over and over in my sketches, always different, always familiar. I wasn't drawing it out of fear. I was trying to understand. Why didn't it kill me? Why did it stop? There was a moment I remember in the middle of the attack. Its eyes had locked with mine. Something passed between us. Recognition? Mercy? Or maybe it simply got bored. But I don't believe that. It chose to leave. That single choice haunted me more than the wounds. I began researching tiger behavior, migration patterns, smuggling rings in the Caucasus. I needed to know where it came from, what it was doing so far from its kind, and most of all, what it saw in me that made it walk away. The deeper I dug, the more impossible it seemed. That species wasn't supposed to be here. It was like chasing a myth, but my body bore the proof. I had become the myth's witness. Months passed. I returned to the forest once, alone against protocol. I retraced my steps, every broken twig burned into my memory. I found the tree with the claw marks. Still there. Fresh ones too. Not faded. Something was moving through these woods again, but not aimlessly. It was circling, studying, maybe even remembering. I laid the branch from Goga on the ground beneath that tree. A peace offering? A farewell? I didn't know. But as I stood there, I no longer felt afraid. I felt seen. And for the first time since the attack, I spoke aloud. Not to the tiger, not to the trees, but to the part of myself that had been left behind. Torn, buried, clawed open. I said, "You lived." That was enough. Maybe I'd never get the answers I wanted. Maybe the point wasn't understanding why it spared me, but learning how to carry what it gave me. Not just pain, but something older, something wild, something that doesn't need words. My reassignment came 6 months later. Desk work, intelligence logistics, far from the field. They said it was temporary, that I could return to active duty after further evaluation. But we both knew that was a polite way of saying you're different now. And they were right. I was. I couldn't look at maps of forested terrain without my palms sweating, couldn't watch wildlife footage without my chest tightening. But deeper than that, I didn't see the world the same way anymore, not since I'd felt death breathing against my skin and chose not to look away. I started spending time with local animal conservation groups. It began as therapy. The military had a program for trauma exposure recovery, but it turned into something more. I wanted to learn about the creatures we shared this world with, not to hunt, but to understand. The more I learned, the more I saw that what happened to me wasn't just a freak event. It was part of something larger. A predator pushed out of its natural home, forced into unfamiliar ground. It hadn't attacked me out of malice. It was surviving. My nights were still fractured. The dreams hadn't stopped, but they changed. The tiger wasn't chasing me anymore. Sometimes it just stood there, watching from the tree line. Other times it walked beside me. Once I reached out and touched its fur, and it didn't vanish. I woke up with tears on my face and a strange calm I couldn't explain. That morning, I knew what I had to do. Not for revenge, not even for closure, but for the part of me that still needed to return to the forest. Not as prey, not as a soldier, but as a witness. I filed for early discharge. It was a hard decision, but the truth was, I couldn't go back to the person I was before. That person died in the woods, under those eyes. In his place was someone else. Someone who understood silence, who saw the layers of the world in every crack of a branch. I moved to a remote village near the forest, the same one Goga came from. He didn't say much when I arrived, just nodded. He understood. We didn't need words. The jungle had given us a language of its own. With the help of the locals, we founded a small wildlife refuge. Unofficial at first, then slowly gaining traction. We didn't track animals. We didn't cage them. We protected their corridors, educated nearby communities, and built barriers between cattle lands and migratory paths. I didn't talk much about what had happened, but my scars spoke for me. Kids would stare. Old men would ask in whispers. I never told the full story. Not until now. I needed time to understand it myself. A year later, a motion sensor camera captured an image that brought me to my knees. A tiger. Lean, powerful, unmistakable. The same markings I had burned into my memory. It was walking through the tree line, not hunting, just passing. Alone. I stared at that image for hours. I don't know if it was the same one. I'll never know. But something inside me whispered yes. Not out of fear, not out of fantasy, but out of something deeper. A recognition I could feel in my bones. The next morning I returned to the spot where it happened. The forest had healed around it. No blood, no torn earth. Just quiet, dignified space. I sat on the same cold soil, placed my palm on the ground, and closed my eyes. I whispered one word into the silence. Thank you. For the pain, for the terror, for the transformation. I wasn't asking for forgiveness. I was offering it. To the beast, to the land, to myself. The wind moved through the trees like breath, and I swear for a moment I wasn't alone. These days I don't wear a uniform, I wear scars, I carry stories. And sometimes I walk the forest paths just to listen, not to find the tiger, but to remember that I survived something sacred, not just an attack but an awakening. I see now that it wasn't just an animal encounter. It was a confrontation with something ancient and honest, something that showed me what it means to face death without surrender, and to walk away not as a soldier but as a man reborn. That day, the forest didn't just tear into my flesh, it unmade everything I thought I was. And in the quiet after the roar, it gave me something more rare than survival. Understanding. The kind that doesn't fit into reports or medals. The kind that carves itself into the soul and never lets go. That day, the jungle didn't just leave a scar on my body. It carved a truth into my soul. A journalist came through the village last spring, chasing rumors of a tiger in the Caucasus. He was skeptical, as most are. Carried a drone, a notebook, and the usual doubt behind polite eyes. When he asked to interview me, I declined. I've turned down many interviews over the years, some from major networks, even military intelligence, not because I'm afraid to tell it, but because most people are just looking for spectacle, for the monster in the dark. They don't really want to know what it means to survive something like that. But this time something felt different. The man wasn't rushing. He didn't pry. He asked if I still dream of the tiger. When I nodded, he simply said, "Me too, but mine's not real." That made me pause. We sat by the fire, drinking bitter tea. I told him the story, all of it. Not the military version. Not the rumor. The truth. The teeth. The blood. The silence. And the mercy. When I was done, he didn't speak. Just sat there stunned. Then he said the thing I didn't know I needed to hear. You weren't just spared. You were chosen. That stuck with me. Not because it felt heroic. It didn't. I don't feel chosen in the way stories make people sound special. I feel chosen in the way a mountain chooses to collapse or a river decides to flood. No warning, no explanation. Just a raw, undeniable force pressing against your life and reshaping it. The tiger wasn't a test. It wasn't fate. It was truth. Unfiltered, merciless, and complete. And I carry that truth with me every day in every breath, every limp, every quiet morning spent waiting for the wind. Sometimes on foggy days, I walk the outer perimeter of the refuge. Locals say the tiger hasn't been seen in over a year, that maybe it moved on or died. But I don't believe that. Not because I need it to live, but because I can feel it still. In the way birds scatter suddenly, or how the forest holds its breath just before dusk. You learn to notice those things after something tries to kill you and doesn't. You become part of the landscape marked by something deeper than blood. I get letters now. From soldiers. From trauma survivors. From people who say they've never seen a tiger but feel like they've been hunted by something too. Depression, loss, war, grief. They ask me what to do, how to survive. And I never know what to say. There's no clean answer. No 7-step path to healing. All I can offer is this. Don't run from the thing that tried to end you. Face it, name it, learn its shape. You may never defeat it, but you can outlive it. And sometimes that's even more powerful. A child from the village once asked me if I was scared to go back into the woods. I told him yes every time, but I still go. Not because I'm brave, but because I want the forest to know I'm not afraid of remembering. If the tiger is out there watching, I want it to see me walking upright. Not as a challenge, but as a mirror. Because on that day, I looked into the eyes of a creature so ancient, so perfect. It stripped away every lie I told myself about strength, about control, about being the apex. Sometimes I wonder, if the tiger had killed me, would it have been cleaner, easier? But I don't let that thought linger, because the harder path was surviving. And every scar I carry is proof that I did. Some people spend their whole lives numb. I was torn open and shown something so real, so sharp it woke me up. I'll never sleep the same again. But I'll never take life for granted either. Not even a simple breath. There's a place near the riverbank where the fog collects low and the trees part just enough to let the light in. That's where I go when the memories tighten around my ribs. I sit in silence. No words. No prayers. Just presence. And every so often I think I hear a sound, soft, steady. a breath just beyond the mist. Maybe it's the wind, maybe it's the tiger, or maybe it's just me remembering what it means to be seen and spared. Because surviving isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about carrying it with honor, with purpose, with quiet reverence for the thing that almost broke you, and didn't. Some scars you wear on your skin. Others grow roots in your soul. I faced the forest's fury, and in its silence I found my voice.